in terms of religion, he is a Catholic, devout Catholic. So how does he treat the Protestant minorities, the Huguenots? How does that play out in France?
To begin with, in line with Henri IV and Louis XIII, his father, and the two Catholic cardinals, Richelieu and Mazarin, they'd been treated quite well, better than the Catholics were treated in England. They were allowed their own representative assembly, and they had protectors, and they could reach the top of the state like Marshal Turenne. But gradually he tightens the screws on this minority. He begins to remove the right to have religious services. And finally, in 1685, he makes all religious services illegal, and he arrests a lot of Protestants. He separates them from their families. And then later, unheard of persecutions, Protestants trying to leave France. People were encouraged to rob them and arrest them. Many were killed. Ships were searched, like in the 20th century, people trying to leave Spain or Germany, and the trains and etc. were searched. So ships were searched leaving France, and I mean, unbearable. And people, dying Protestants, had the Catholic host put into their mouths so that they would, in theory, die Catholics. But this was his decision. I think he had a sort of, well, we can't interpret the politics of religion, because if you're not yourself religious, I'm not religious, but he thought he had a direct line to God and was doing God's work and was saving the souls of his Protestant subjects. That's what he thought.
But he wasn't initially like that. There was a change, and what caused that change? It was just
nobody
to
knows for certain. Either it's guilt at the excesses of his youth, or he's competing with the Pope for authority over the French Catholic Church. The French Catholic Church has its own assembly, which votes taxes to him. Maybe he's pleasing them. They didn't like, the bishops didn't like, but not all bishops. Most bishops didn't like a rather glamorous Protestant minority, which maybe was rather a better example of Christian faith than the Catholics. So they had begged him to abolish Protestants' right of worship. And perhaps the key thing is, I mean, he was fundamentally a European, always thinking of other monarchs, getting ahead of other monarchs. The Holy Roman Emperor, his rival, Leopold I of Austria, 1683, he's won a great victory. He's defeated the Turkish army in front of Vienna. He's reconquering Hungary for Christendom. Maybe he'll get to Constantinople. He's the most glorious Catholic monarch in Europe. This is unbearable to Louis XIV. How can he be better than Leopold I? Well, Leopold I tolerates Protestants in Hungary. Therefore, Louis XIV will abolish toleration for Protestants in France and will say to the Pope, look at me, I'm better than the others. Though, in fact, the Pope hadn't really encouraged him to do it. It's a combination of these factors and possibly the influence of certain Catholics at court.